we are again. Good evening. A very, very warm welcome to you to, well, this is the Open Door Show. You know that because it says it on the signs behind us. Or is it that side? Which side is it? I don't know. One of those sides. Anyway, it says it behind both of us. And it's the Open Door Show from propertyCEO because it says it over there as well. Or is it over there? I'm not sure which way around that is. You see, because we're looking in a mirror, it's like reflecting on us. So it's a bit difficult to work that out. Anyway, my name's Ritchie Clapson, and I'm here. He looks a bit frustrated, doesn't he? With the other half of...
I'm all good.
You're all good. Okay, with the other half of propertyCEO. And he's called Mr. Ian Child. Ian, do you want to say good evening?
Good evening, everybody. Good to have you with us.
See, slightly more serious, you see. But this is supposed to be a fun show, so we've got to get involved. We're going to get that seriousness wiped right out of Ian this evening, that's for sure, aren't we, Ian?
We are. I'm on it.
Great to have you here. 45 minutes, that's what it is. Informative and punchy, someone said to us one day. And we're going to be taking, as always, a deep dive into the world of small-scale property development. Isn't that right, Ian?
Certainly is. We're going to be covering some of the latest news items, and we'll also be talking to some of the movers and shakers out there in the world of property. It's what we do here on Open Door. Also, hopefully, shining the spotlight on a few areas where we think there could be a good opportunity for new developers to take a look at. So all that in store. But
above all, as I said, and even Ian's going to join in with this, okay? We're here to have a bit of fun. Within these four walls, there's lots going on outside in the world, but this is 45 minutes of fun every week. Property and fun, what's not to like? Make a bit of money out of it as well along the way if that's what you want. Life is definitely far too short not to. But, of course, we need you to join in. So please put your comments, your questions, anything you want in the chat box. Pop it in the chat box. You can make comments in there. Rory's put a comment in there. Hello from Super Sunny Winchester. From Rory at closebridgingfinance.com. I think that's like a free ad that Rory's put in there. Closebridgingfinance.com. I've read his whole website out twice.
Wow. And this must be a different Winchester to the one that we're in, but...
No, sunny. I can just see outside the window of my studio. It looks sunny.
Sun always finds me, Rory.
Oh, it does. Give us a wave, give a hands up if you can see and hear us. Give us a wave, give us a hands up. Good. Ian, what's the plan tonight?
Well, you know how the best laid plans and all that. Unfortunately, our scheduled guest has had a bit of a technology nightmare, so won't be joining us. So at last minute, we managed to pull in somebody who okay, a little bottom of the barrel perhaps, but would reckon that they could come up with something to talk about for about 8 days, but we reckon we could whittle it down to about 10 minutes. And there he is, Mr. Clapson, indeed. I've got no idea what you're going to talk about. What are you going to talk about?
Nor have I. You can do the news in a minute and you'll give me a few minutes to think of something. Yeah, excellent. Poor old Dan Stiles, he was due to be with us. He's terribly frustrated. I've got a few texts from him. Total frickin' nightmare. I don't know what frickin' stands for, but that's what he's saying. He's had all sorts of problems. Even his phones haven't been working today. So you can imagine how difficult that is in your business. I am truly sorry and very frustrated by the situation BT has caused us. Oh, there he goes, blaming it on someone else. Typical project manager. You see that, Ian? Oh, dear. What an excuse. Anyway, look, doesn't matter, does it? We're going to get Dan Stiles on again for another show. Apologies for all of you that wanted to listen to Dan Stiles this evening. It would have been a great show. We haven't had him on for a year. I know we're quite booked up with guests, but we'll try and get our team to slide him in somewhere. We're not going to bump another guest. We won't do that, will we? Unless they're a really bad one. But we will try and get Dan back. Apologies for that. Yeah, there we go. What can we do? Who's on this evening? Let's have a look. Patricia's on. Hello, Patricia. Diane's on. Diane's been with us today all day, and so has Emma and Jen. They've been with us all day. They're on a 3-day training session with us, so they've come back for more this evening. My word, ladies, surely you've got something better to do than listen to us for 45 minutes. You've had about 8 hours of us today. Anyway, you're welcome. Who else is on? Patrick's on, Annie's on, Lorraine's on, Andrew's on, Dawn's on. Who's just come on down the bottom there? Someone else is just coming on there. Oh, Milesh is on. Hello, Milesh. Russell's on. Ursula's on. Hello, Ursula. Good evening. Stephen's on. Rachel's on. Adair's on. Oh my God, it's like a who's who, Ian. It's like a who's who.
New friends and old. I like it.
Andrew's on. Wow, look at that. Mark's on. Mark's with us today as well. Hello, Mark. Another crazy fool. There's lots of people on. Another Mark. There's so many people on. Well done. Look, nice to see you. Sue's on. Hello, Sue. I keep liking to read names out because I recognise a lot of you. There's a lot of our students. There's a regular guests on here. So look, you're all very, very welcome. Whilst I try and think of a subject to talk about this evening, in the absence of Dan Stiles, if you're just joining us, who's cried off because of IT problems, Ian's going to give us the news. Ian, what's the news in the world?
The news. Well, it's the news, and I'll do that at the end of the night. So the first one, I've got 4 today, actually, by the looks of things. So I always kind of mention house prices, because house prices are always going to go down next month, and then guess what? They go up. Apparently, according to the Telegraph, a house price fall is now unavoidable as growth slows in. So there's been the 3rd successive month of property market slowing growth. And apparently we are now, prices have gone up 10.7% in the year to June, which was down from 11.2% in the year to May, according to the Nationwide Building Society. Property prices climbed by just 0.3% month on month. So lots of people predicting that things are going to go backwards. It's a bit difficult to say, to be honest. There is that underlying demand. We, of course, will wait and see and find out. But certainly some interesting stats there. It's kind of pointing to the fact that affordability and so on is just going to keep that slow growth going. So we might dip backwards towards the as we go into the second half of the year. However, most commentators are not predicting a crash, which is probably good news. Next item I got here is just to update you on something. Really, you might have remembered just a little while ago, the government decided to change the rules with regarding to charging of ground rent on leases, and that actually comes into force today. So the ban on charging ground rent on new leases in England and Wales comes into force today. So from a development perspective, we might have looked to be able to sell off the leases and be able to basically make a margin from that. Typically now what will happen is, because you can't do that, then effectively the freehold will be sold with the property, which creates an uplift in terms of value. So hopefully profit moves from kind of one area to the other, but that came into force today. An interesting one here, we sort of cover the whole realm of property here. And there was one thing that I saw, that the government is launching a review into short-term lets. So this will affect people that have got properties that they're doing on Airbnb and so on. They reckon that there's been this huge uptick in the number of properties that are being rent out in the short term, particularly as Brits tend to have been holidaying internally rather than jumping on planes and so on, particularly obviously over the last couple of years, but looks set to continue. And they're looking to put in measures such as a kite mark scheme, sort of registration scheme, spot checks for compliance, and rules on issues such as gas safety, self-certification, blah, 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 lots of sort of legal requirements and so on. So regulation for the short-term industry potentially in the offing. And then
I've
finally,
never heard anyone on News at 10 go and blah, blah, blah.
Okay, well, this isn't the News at 10.
True.
I'll get there eventually, but at the moment we're purely amateur. And the last one is here, another article about Jeremy Clarkson and planning. So for those of you that don't know, Jeremy Clarkson, the former host of Top Gear and host of various other things now, has had an ongoing feud with the planning officers in his local authority, because he's got a farm. He obviously does this farming program thing, and he's been trying to expand it. He has had apparently 3 applications for his farm turned down by West Oxfordshire District Council because it's in an area of outstanding national beauty. And he's been accused of acting like a classic bully. Apparently he said, these, how can I put it, not terribly bright people in planning departments just don't understand what they're messing around with. Which, yeah, is, as ever, like Clarkson, directing to the point. Whereas the head of planning of West Oxfordshire said, the owner of Diddley Squat Farm, Mr. Clarkson, clearly knows diddly squat about the planning system. So it rumbles on, but I'm not sure that he's going exactly the right way of getting about his planning permission, his planning consent going through. But it's all good, entertaining stuff. There we are. Hold on, bear with me 1 second. And that was the news.
Brilliant. Look, I'm sure everyone loved that. Give us a wave if you love the news, you love Ian doing the news. If you could listen to Ian doing the news for the whole 45 minutes.
That would help you out, wouldn't it?
Loads of hands went up and they've all gone down really quickly, which is surprising. Ian, thank you for the news. Good stuff. You're always going to get little updates of what's going on here. Hopefully you find that useful. Evening, chap, says John. Evening, John. Thank you very much. Adair says, shame that Dan's not on this evening, but I know you guys will fill the slot adequately. Not sure what adequately means. I think we're going to fill it very well indeed, actually. So Adair, thank you very much for that comment. Okay, what am I going to talk about tonight? Let me just give you a few minutes, and then please pop any questions you've got about anything to do with property development. We can't really help you on buy-to-lets or HMOs, but we'll have a go. Anything to do with property, pop it in, and we'll see what we can do this evening. I see a few questions coming in, so please add to that, and we'll get us through as many as we can. Now, let me talk to you then. A little fill-in subject. We often talk about this. How can you be successful in small-scale development? So a couple of questions. Need a bit of audience participation on this, so you're going to have to stick your hand up and give me a little wave, okay? Who wants to get into small-scale property development? Give me a wave if you want to get into that. Okay, quite a few of you. Good stuff. Okay, drop your hands. Lower all the hands. I'll lower all the hands. So click them all down. Next question, who's already started but are struggling to get anything going? Give us a wave there. Yeah, a few of you. It's difficult, isn't it? It's not easy. This is not easy. Who's actually not even started? And let's give us a wave on here if you're thinking, my word, I haven't started, but this looks like it's going to be so difficult. Give us a wave there. Yeah, a few hands going up. Good selection of hands going up. Good stuff. Thank you very much. Well, look, what can you do? What can you do? People are putting a little wave in there and all sorts coming in. Brilliant stuff. Thank you. What can you do that is different to other people? Because you've got to stand out. And what is it that most new developers don't do? Would that be useful? Would you like to know that? I'm guessing the answer is perhaps a yes. Okay. So first of all, I'm going to give you three little things just to get your head round tonight, just to sort of kick us off and get us going on tonight's show. Well, the first thing is people don't get involved. People sit behind their laptops. Let me tell you right now, okay, the property development you cannot do sat behind a laptop screen. It doesn't work, okay? You've got to get involved. You've got to get out there. A little bit of a drink there, sorry. I've been talking all day. My mouth's really dry. Anyway, you've got to get out there. I say you've got to immerse yourself in the industry. And I mean that you've got to get in there. You've got to mix and mingle with industry people. The brokers, the architects, the structural engineers, the project managers, the quantity surveyors, the contractors, the planning consultants, etc. You've got to mix with them. You've got to be part of them. It's like any business, any industry, unless you're in it, okay, how is anyone going to take you seriously? How are you going to get going? You want opportunities. You want people to work for you. You want to get the money. Okay, you want to deliver a successful business. So you've got to be in the industry. Okay, you've got to rub alongside all those people that are there. And I know a lot of people find that quite scary. And I'm sure some of you do. Sat there tonight listening to this, we've got a lot of people on. I bet a lot of you find that scary and you want to get into this industry. And it's so easy to sit back behind that laptop, wait for the alerts on the portals. It won't happen that way, okay? And even when it does, if you're not getting out there, you're not building those relationships. At the end of the day, when people are scared of this, I want to just tell you, they're ordinary people, okay? Architects, structural engineers, I'm one of them. We're just ordinary people. Before you make any cheeky comments, I'm just an ordinary sort of person. Don't you smile, child? I can see what you're doing there, picking your head in an old fashion. Anyway, look, they are just ordinary people. Thing I always remember, I don't know how you guys were out there. When you met your first boss, what was that like? Now, for me, it was quite interesting because my first boss when I was 16, it wasn't a problem at all because lucky enough, my father, who was in the industry, knew my boss. And the reason he became my boss is because my father did not want me sat around on me butt over the summer holidays when I was 16. So he rang a friend of his and said, can you give my lad, me, some work experience? For nothing, by the way. I had to go and work for nothing. And it was, and it was, I tell you, making the boss's tea and cleaning the toilets. Okay, running down the post box. And actually, do you know, those days, a 16-year-old running down the post office and buying the boss's fax, which you could do at 16 because he knew someone in the post office. But it wasn't scary because he was a bit of a scary boss to a lot of the other people. I eventually got off the job. I got an apprenticeship and so on. But some of the other apprentices, he was quite scary to them, and he was. But I knew him when he was around my parents' house with his wife, and I tell you what, he wasn't the boss then. That was for sure. He wasn't the boss then. His name was, we used to have to call him Sir. Okay. Dick Watkins was his name. No longer with us, bless the poor fella, God rest his soul. But his wife used to call him Richard. And I remember him sat around my parents and said, Richard, I just thought, oh, yeah, so we can see where you sit at home. And so that scariness was taken out of it. And I just tell you that story to say they're just ordinary people. Get out there, okay? Get involved, immerse yourself in the industry. And I mean that in the biggest sense. Get involved. Second point I want to make to you tonight, okay, in this little extra session we're doing, be confident, okay? You are the CEO, you're the Chief Executive Officer. If you do it properly, don't be subservient. I know we've got for a few of our students on, and sometimes I rant on about this stuff, but it's so important. Do not be subservient. You need to be confident in your own ability. And remember, this is an interesting point. A lot of you forget this. When you're going out and you're meeting these professionals, I'm talking about these architects, structural engineers, etc. Once you're educated, okay, now I'm going to say that because I run an educational company, but it's true. Once you're educated, you're probably, almost certainly, probably without a shadow of a doubt, know more than most of the other team members overall about development. Because an architect's going to be great on architecture, but you don't want to be an architect, okay? And a contractor's very good at contracting, but you don't want to be a contractor. And hardly any of them will know anything about development overall. I can tell you that's true because I've trained a lot of them. I've trained a lot of industry professionals who actually think they know, but they don't. So actually they will look up to you quite quickly. See, that makes sense, okay? You will know more than them. So you've got to get your confidence up. You've got to have confidence in your own ability, okay? And remember as well, I don't know what word I could substitute for this, but you've got to have the kahunas or whatever you might call it. There could be another word in there that you could substitute for it, but this is a recorded session, so I'm not going to say balls, okay? But it could be juggling balls. But so you've got to have the juggling balls, okay? It's female equivalent, I'm sure, but you've got to have the kahunas, whatever, the confidence to go out and do this. They haven't. These other industry professionals, they're sat there, probably in a job, probably paid. Even a lot of these brokers are probably in a job, probably paid. A lot of them will look over that fence and think, do you know, I'd like to be a developer. We know that because we train a lot of them. But just they're going to be looking at you with some admiration that you're doing it. You've gone and done it. You've jumped off the big, the big 60-foot diving board with confidence, with education. You know, there's water in the pool. You know it's deep enough, except you know how to land. Do you get my point? Okay, that they're going to be looking at you differently. They're going to, oh my word, they've given it a go. And then you will get that respect if you command it. If you go in subservient, please sir, can I have some more? You won't get anywhere. If you go in confidently, we always say look successful. Okay, look successful, be successful. Hold your head high. Don't go in a bit like this. Oh, I'm brand new to this. No, go in with confidence. Okay. And my final point, and I see questions coming in. Great. So we're going to get to some of them. Remember this final point. Everyone starts somewhere. Okay. Everyone starts somewhere. Anyone ever learned how to ride a bike? I'm sure quite a few of you have. And you remember, if you can think that far back. Now, for me, obviously, it wasn't that long ago. But remember, I'm sure some of you are a lot older than me. Okay. Certainly when I met you, you look a lot older. Some of you anyway. I mean, some of you look younger, but a lot of you look a lot older. Anyway, I've always obviously maintained my youthful looks, which is a terrific thing. Anyway, that aside, let's not get into that as a debate or a discussion. When you rode a bike, it was scary, wasn't it? It was scary. When you first learned to drive a car, it was scary, wasn't it? I remember my sister years ago had a big stand-up row with my father, and she said, "There's absolutely no way, it's completely impossible that you can change gear, steer, indicate, and look in the mirrors." I told my father he was talking out of his what's name. Okay, she now does it subconsciously. She's not brilliant, I have to say. I wouldn't want to go on a long trip with her. She's scary as anything. And she's actually got a dodgy left eye. So definitely, if anyone gets an invite to be on a car with my sister, do not bother. Okay, do not bother. Anyway, do you remember that though? Okay, so this is where you're starting. You're starting at the beginning, and you have the skills. I'm going to suggest you've got those management skills, organization, decision, and fundamentally, this is about people skills. Okay, Richard Branson started his cruise company. He had to start somewhere. People took him seriously. The chicken and the egg. You've got to start somewhere. Maybe that's not a great analogy because we never understand that one, do we? But do you get my point? You've got to start somewhere. And remember, we go back to this subservient thing as a sort of a final point. Who's buying and who's selling? Who's buying and who's selling? You're not selling. You're buying. You're the paymaster. So remember, let's just think about this. Just a few tips, okay? For those that's just joined us, you're probably thinking, where's Dan Stiles? I've got Clapson going on it. Dan Stiles has got internet problems, phone problems. He's fallen off the face of the earth, and unfortunately can't be with us this evening. So you've got me instead. I know that's obviously a terrific substitute, but anyway, here's what it is. So I've just been talking about, if you want to be successful, do something that other people don't do. Okay, go out there and do things properly. Get involved, immerse yourself in this industry. Be confident you're the CEO. Do not be subservient. Remember, everyone starts somewhere. You've got the skills. You're the one that's buying. Have that confidence. What do you think of that? Was that quite good, Ian, as a little sort of intro section?
Fantastic. I learned a lot myself there, particularly about the female equivalent of juggling balls. I'm not quite sure where you're going with that one. And also,
No, I didn't.
I thought you were going to reveal the secret of your mysteriously youthful good looks. I thought it might be a kind of moisturized thing, but we're still in the dark there.
Oil of Ulay.
Really? Isn't it Ulay?
Oh, I don't know. That's what I asked for, and they gave it to me when I went to Boots. Other moisturizers are available, of course. We don't promote oil of Ulay, or whatever the damn thing's called. Anyway, Jen says, thank you, Ritchie. That's just no problem at all. Rachel says, that was terrific. Oh, thank you, Rachel. That's very kind. Wise words, says Mike. There you go. No rude comments in there.
No.
So we do some questions.
Let's do some questions. I've got a question in from Patricia. Good evening, Patricia, who asked, does the leasehold changes apply only to new build houses and not flats? It applies to new leases. So whatever the property, if it's a new lease, then the ban applies. It doesn't apply to existing leases. And there is a kind of a movement there, I think, to potentially address that. Or that was certainly, there are some people that are they've had their nose put out of joint about that. But no, at the moment, it is just for new leases going forward for any type of property. Hope that helps.
Brilliant, brilliant. Here's a question from Giovanni. Giovanni, a regular guest of ours. Giovanni, good, nice to see you. Good evening. What do you think is the most important stage of a project? Is it finding it, funding it, planning it, building it?
Oh,
it's almost like a song coming on there. Look, Giovanni, I guess in lots of ways it's finding it, because if you don't find it, well, the rest of it doesn't come together, doesn't it? You don't have to worry about funding it, planning it, or building it unless you find it. So I think finding it is absolutely imperative, obviously. Having said that, okay, once you find it, and let's assume, I mean, it's not easy, but let's assume that someone offers you an opportunity. That's the easy bit. So someone said, here's an opportunity. That's it, you found it. Now, the difficulty then in terms of funding it, planning it, or building it. Funding it, not a problem, okay? If you find a good project, Giovanni, you can fund it. The money's there. Obviously, you've got to know how to get it, but that's not a problem to fund a project, okay? And in terms of, is it important? Yes, it's important, but it's not going to be a problem. In terms of planning, I presume you're talking about planning permissions, permitted development rights. Provided you know what you're doing, that's not really a problem, okay? Because you're not going to do a building that hasn't got permitted development rights, particularly if you're one of our students, okay? We're going to try and direct you towards the path of least resistance. That's absolutely certain. So in terms of planning it, you've got an industry professional alongside you, that's probably okay. So I think if you talk about the most important stage, and if I actually tweak your question a little bit, use my prerogative to do that, is what's the most important stage that actually could go wrong, that you really need to focus on? And I'm going to say, Giovanni, that's building it. Okay, we call that pillar 8. We have 8 pillars, which is a system of process that we teach people. It's like the franchise manual of development to be successful. And they're building it, the pillar 8, getting it delivered. Most people get wrong. It's highly complex. Okay, you've got to go into this the right way. You have, unfortunately, dare I say, a contractor whose business model is to maximize their profit, which means they're probably charging you more money or building it for less or an inferior quality. So you've got a thing which is working against you, and you've got to try and control that and deliver it within your cost plan, within your contingency. So I would say, Giovanni, the most important stage to focus on is actually building it. Hopefully that answers your question and a bit of clarity on the other stages. Ian.
Fantastic. Got a question here from Claire. Good evening, Claire. Everyone says the money is out there for deals, but where is it and how do you get it if you are new? Okay, so I think that the broad picture here is that the way finance works in the world of development is relatively unique in as much as there's a whole industry there associated with financing development projects. So it's a very well established industry. Typically, the money is coming from 2 places. It's coming from commercial lenders, typically, and they may include just traditional banks, specialist banks, family funds, and also potentially issued places like bridging finance and so on, as the need arises, and also from private investors as well. So it's generally you're putting those two things, those two elements together. I think in terms of why people with money want to invest in development, I think there is a lot of money out there, and it is difficult for people with money to find investments that produce a suitable return. We've got interest rates going up, which, you know, from that perspective is heading in the right direction. If you've got capital, but, you know, 1.25% wherever we are now isn't really going to move the needle a great deal. So when we talk about, for example, things like private investment, you would be typically looking at providing private investors with an 8 to 10% return, which is, you know, a far better deal than typically they would get in most other places. And of course, it's the underlying asset is property, which is something that always has less volatility, let's say, than things like stocks and shares and so on. So the main focus is things like the deal, but it's also about your credibility as well. So it's also about making sure that you as a developer look good, that you're bringing good deals, and you know how to find a good deal that's going to make, you know, make a profit, because ultimately that is where the money comes from. It's having a good deal, a good team, and you as a developer sort of sitting in the background and overseeing things as the CEO. So yeah, I think I would have confidence that the money is definitely out there. That's the message that we get time and time again from the sort of the financial networks. But you do have to have a good deal and know what you're doing. There we are, Claire. I think that helps. Ritchie.
Yeah, sure it does. Thank you. I've got a technical question here from Rory.
Wow.
Can you explain the difference between subsidence and heave when building a new property? How do you mitigate the risk with both? Yes, I can explain that if you want. Okay, it's slightly technical for a lot of people. Probably a lot of people think, what are they talking about now? Okay, so the difference between subsidence is something which is settling, heave, which is something which is rising, and you could probably get the clue from the question there. How do they come about? Subsidence, that it depends on the ground conditions. It's a geotechnical question, really, in lots of ways. So it depends on the ground conditions. If you have got clay, okay, clay moves around, clay shrinks and expands. Now, how can it shrink and expand? Well, it's the water content, and it's often to do with trees and the influence of trees. So let's talk about subsidence. If you've got a building that you're going to build onto clay, because you're talking about a new property, but this same process exists with existing. If a building's built on clay, okay, and it's got a great big tree next door to it, okay, and you build on that clay, and then someone takes the tree down. The moisture content, all the water, the moisture that tree would have soaked up through its roots to live on, all of that moisture is now, you know, which has been taken out. Sorry, no, wrong way around. I better start the right way around. I'm going to start again on that, Rory, because I've got that run the wrong way. Start again. If with our tree, if we put a tree in, so we got clay, we put a tree in, it sucks all the moisture out. What happens to the clay? The moisture content's changed, it's gone down, it's dried out, so it contracts, so the building could settle. Reverse it the other way round, okay? If you actually then have got a property, we've got clay, okay? You've got a tree, you take out the tree used to take out a lot of moisture out of the ground, the moisture level increases, the clay swells, and that's a heave. Subsidence can also be caused by other things, by washout in granular materials. So you could have a broken pipe. This is a real common one, Rory, for broken pipes. And you get a broken pipe, could be a stormwater pipe, rainwater pipe, below ground, it breaks. What happens is the rainwater goes out into the surrounding soils and flushes out what we would call the fines from the soils. So it's just the granular material left, and that then starts to collapse. That can cause subsidence. How do you get around it? How do you mitigate the risk with both of these? Well, it depends what materials and stuff you're on. Obviously, if you're building new, the broken pipe thing should not come into play. So primarily, you're probably talking about clays. And it's all to do with the depth of the foundations against what type of tree, what species of tree, how far away it is from the foundation. So generally, we would go deeper, okay, to get away from the influence of the tree. So there's a depth of the foundations related to the type of tree and how far away it is. And another problem we would avoid is we would put what we call like a compressible material like a polystyrene on the edge of the foundations, so we don't have the soil, clay soil, expanding and then heaving the foundations up as it goes. Okay, so those are a couple of ways that we do it. It's all to do with depth, foundations, and trees. Rory, find a good structural engineer. They will help you. There we go. Technical question. That's quite interesting. I've wanted to do that for a while.
Yeah, haven't been asked that one before.
No.
Got one here from Malesh. Evening, Malesh. Good to have you on. Evening, both. So that's to you and to me. Do you have any tips for CRMs that manage both the sales funnel and contact management? So CRMs, customer relationship management. So basically what we advocate is that when you're trying to manage both deals and certainly relationships with agents, it all gets rather muddly quite quickly, it gets a bit messy. So you need some sort of system to be able to kind of organize stuff. And a CRM system is, whilst it's not perfectly designed necessarily for property developers, most of them do a pretty good job of things like setting reminders for you to make contact and diary notes, and being able to keep a record of things like conversations and information about all the agents. Because as I said, it very quickly gets a bit messy when you're talking to so many agents about so many properties, or your funnel might have lots and lots of different deals in it and they all get a bit blurry after the time. So the answer to your question, Malesh, is that the two that I have used, that I have a preference for, are Less Annoying CRM is one and HubSpot is the other. There are many out there, and I would say it's probably a case, they all do more or less the same thing. I would say most of them have got a free option that you can kind of try and see what you get on with the most. At the end of the day, it's going to be a question of budget and functionality and generally what you get on with. But Less Annoying CRM and HubSpot are ones, not just I've used, I've sort of, in terms of the conversations I've had with other people that use development, those two tend to come up a fair bit. But other CRM systems are available. Hope that helps.
Great stuff. Rory's put a follow-up. So he said, if you remove a tree or lots of trees, you may have to leave the clay to settle, which means that your build could take longer and cost more. No, don't leave it, Rory. You don't wait. It'll take at least a season or two to settle down. You adjust the depth of the foundations to suit. Okay, that's what you do. Even the trees are taken out. Okay, it's a technical approach. There are charts and tables that we follow for this stuff. They don't have to wait. That would be the wrong way of doing it. Diane says, okay, I talked about this earlier. So where would you meet the architects, the surveyors, and the project managers? Generally, Thursday, Friday night, probably in the pub, if I'm honest.
Sadly so.
Yeah. Look, I think, and joking aside, a lot of them done it will be, okay, they would be out there socializing, as a lot of industries do. What you can do, and this is, very simple in lots of ways. If you find out just where one person meets, so if you meet someone from the industry, so where'd you hang out? Where'd you hang out? Now, I'm based down here in the South Coast, and if we go to one of our cities down here, Southampton, there's a road called Oxford Street. And Oxford Street is where a lot of people hang out, particularly in the summer, out on the wine bars. Out. If you know who they are, there's loads of people that are in the industry down there. What also you'll find down is get out to property meetings. I'm not talking about property networking meetings, okay, because you're probably not going to find them there. So I'm talking about property meetings where industry people meet. A starting point for that, go to your local Chamber of Commerce meeting, business breakfasts, okay? And they're all, if you go on Eventbrite, they'll all be there. The chances are you'll find one industry professional at least, and then ask them where they hang about. Often they're sort of closed networking groups that they would meet up in, or it's everyone meets down the Dog and Crook every Thursday afternoon, from 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock. It's a bit informal, but you can find out where they hang out. Some areas have property associations, but not property networking groups run by networking people that are all new. Okay, so there are some property associations round and about. Hopefully that gives you a bit of a starting point. Ian.
Bit of an update on the last one. Malesh says, thank you very much. We're on the trials for both the ones that I recommended. And Rory has added his own. I use pipedrive.com. Says it's very good. So there you go. Another one to add to your list. Got a question here from VJ, who asks, how long do you think typically a property development deal takes? So it's kind of a bit of how long's a piece of string, because there's quite a lot of different things that could impact on the length of a project. I think on average, if you were to say somewhere for a small development project, particularly if you're doing a conversion and it's relatively small scale, 18 to 24 months would be a rule of thumb. And that's between kind of when you have an offer accepted and when you finish on the project, you're selling the units. But it can vary on a lot of different factors. So the complexity of the build, anything that you might encounter, the market conditions, and who knows, there have been things over the last couple of years, things like Brexit and pandemics that can come on and impact timescales as well. So there are lots of things that kind of go into the mix. But I think if you were sort of looking at a horizon of 18 to 24 months, if it's assuming that it's a smaller project, then that would probably be a sensible sort of starting point for you to base it on. Hope that helps, Vijay.
Good. Himmet says, do you think it is important to have existing business experience to become a property developer? That's a good question. Himmet. No, it would help. Okay, it's not important, or should I say, it's not imperative. But it is a business that we're running. There's a big distinction that we talk here at propertyCEO when we're talking to students, people that want to get into this industry. And a lot of you, have had interaction with us. You'll know we talk about it's about running a business. Just happens to be a property development business. If you've got existing business experience, well, of course that's going to help. If you don't, it's not a problem, but you need to understand how to run a business. And part of what we do, we always say we teach 3 legs of the stool. The property, sure. The mindset, because that's important, because we all get in our own way, and business. Okay, so we do teach people business, and I think if it's a good training organization, they should teach you the relevant business experience that you need, because the reality is, and I don't know whether you've got business experience or not, I can't tell from your question, is a lot of people never get taught how to run a business. Even if they're in a business, they never get taught how to run it. So it's imperative that you have that education alongside your property education. It's no good just knowing how to get permitted development rights through or appoint an architect if you don't know how to run the business. Cash flow is what kills most businesses, and it killed development businesses if you get it wrong or you don't understand what you're doing. So no, not imperative, very useful if you have. So if you're out there and you're listening in terms of what I was talking about earlier, and you've got a business, you've got some of those skills: management, decision, organization, and of course, fundamentally, you're going to have people skills. There we go. Hopefully that helps.
Got a question here from Helen. Good evening, Helen. How can you work out what the next big demand will be in property? Well, there you go, crystal ball time. What's going to be the next big demand? I think the thing to say is that you're looking at opportunities. So if we look at the market that we're in, which is building property, then there's this underlying demand in terms of what building new homes and what you're going to be building. So I would be looking at what represents kind of the lowest hanging fruit. So what is going to be the easiest way of being able to do a development, bearing in mind that I'm pretty assured that the demand is there. I would always check before I did any deal. I would always be talking to local agents in particular on the ground to make sure that what I was building was kind of fit for purpose, but ultimately trying to sort of work out which direction the market is going. I think we don't necessarily need to do that. We're not trying to do that and kind of take that degree of risk in terms of prediction, because I think we already know and we can already find out where the biggest opportunities are locally. I think also there's a certain aspect to it, which is to be imaginative. So if in terms of what the low-hanging fruit might be, that would be avoiding the planning system as much as possible. So using PD rights where it's easier and quicker to be able to get a change of use. Building what the residential agents would say is that where the demand is, and building for that particular audience. So making sure that you're not creating any white elephants, and also trying to look where there might be less competition. So we've got students, for example, who where everybody else is looking at perhaps converting to residential, they've spotted a gap in the market because there is a burgeoning need for local office pods, basically. So just small office units for people that are now working from home but don't want to work from home, so they can commute 5 minutes up the road, go into a little office thing that they've either bought or rented out. And again, that is potentially easier to do than converting something to residential. So it's perhaps looking at those sort of other opportunities where perhaps there is less competition than doing the obvious. But yeah, I don't think you necessarily need to have a crystal ball to work out what the next big thing in property is going to be, because there's definitely scope to be able to make hay today with what's available at the moment. There we go, Helen. Hope that helps.
Brilliant. We're getting loads in tonight. We'll try and get a few more in. We always wrap up by 1:45, so let's try and get a couple more in. I know there's lots coming in. Still pop them in. We can see what we can get through. John's question. In Dan's absence, yes, shocking he didn't turn up. Those that's just joined us, I know a few people joined late. Apologies, Dan Stiles had a complete IT meltdown, so can't be with us. Can I ask what you think is a fair estimate of a project manager's cost on a relatively straightforward shop and uppers type project for 2 to 3 units and a GDV of 1.2 million? Many thanks. Well, it's not a project manager's cost, because his cost is one thing. What you want is his fees, I'm assuming. Okay, project manager's fee, because what he costs is up to him. But in terms of fee, obviously GDV, what we need to do is break that down to cost. Now, John, I know you'll know what the cost is, okay, because I know you're one of our students, so you'll better work that out, the cost of the scheme, and anywhere between 3 and 6% of the project cost, the construction costs. That's what you want to focus on. And it depends, John, on what duties you're going to get them to do. So it's not based on GDV, okay, it's based on the construction cost. That's the project, the contract that they've got to manage for you. Anywhere between 3 and 6%, depending on what duties they do. The best thing, John, reach out to a couple of project managers, at least 2, ask them what they would do, ask them to give you a menu of services and what their fees are, and importantly, ask them to tell you what they're not going to do for that money. What are they not going to do? Because that flushes out any extras that you might want. John, hope that gives you a bit of a steer. Ian, let's see what else we can do.
I've got a question here from Patricia, who asks, what happened to finance interest during the lockdowns? Were they understanding about delays, or was it just much more expensive? Now, in the main, rather understanding. So I think what had impressed us, and certainly talking to other people in the sort of the finance community, had impressed them, was that the commercial lenders had actually got their thinking caps on it and tried to come up with solutions that would enable create some flexibility. Because of course, you're absolutely right, the challenge is that when nobody is building, these projects are stuck, but of course the interest is accruing day by day, and obviously those deals are then taking longer and the interest is ramping up and so on. So where there was potentially the opportunity for commercial lenders to have their clients over a barrel, so to speak, when it came to the end of their agreements, what we saw was some quite imaginative solutions and flexible solutions come into play. I think at the end of the day, there was an awareness there is a finite pool of developers, there's a finite pool of commercial lenders, and basically if one takes the opportunity to screw over the other when there is a situation like that is outside the other's control, then it probably doesn't do anybody any favors in the long run. So they seem to adopt a more pragmatic approach. Can't speak for everybody, but that was the kind of consensus, I would say. Hopefully we won't have to go through it again anytime soon. Hope that helps.
Great stuff. Mark's question. Mark said, what is the approximate planning application fees to see if your planning has been approved? What would an architect charge? Difficult to answer that, Mark, because it depends on the project. Okay, every project's different. What I would say, because I think what you're probably getting at is about risk money. Okay, what is the risk that you're going to take to make sure you get planned, to make sure you can develop the thing out? And this is a problem that a lot of new developers face, is they're speculating a lot of money up front and they might not even get the planning through. The thing you want to do, Mark, is focus on permitted development rights, okay? Because when you're looking at permitted development rights, you can go to then a planning consultant, and certainly our students have a deal with one of our planning consultants, and literally it's a few hundred quid, okay? Might cost most people out there maybe 400 or 500 quid. You could get a planning consultant who is not going to give you the approval, but they will give you the guidance and the confidence that your permitted development right application will get passed, because it's a right. They're just going to make sure the boxes can be ticked. For that sort of money, you know you've got certainty. You don't necessarily need an architect on board, so there's no architectural fees, okay? And you don't need to submit it for planning, because your planning consultant says, yeah, we know the questions they can ask, it's only this handful, and we can go tick, 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 yes, which case it's okay. If you go for a planning application, the planning application itself will be a few hundred quid. It's not that expensive, okay? But the problem is, what's the fees? Now, you say architects charge. The problem is when you're going to go for a brand new full application, you might need some architectural drawings. Well, it depends on how what it is, what concept you've got. Are they coming up with the whole concept? It could be £1,000, it could be 5,000, okay, for them to come up with the concept. And then are they going to do the application, or are you going to get a planning consultant to do the application? Typically a good planning consultant put an application in, even the permitted development application, because what I was talking about for 500 quid is not necessarily the application, it's an assessment. They might charge £1,000 to put that in. So if you go for a planning application, you could easily get rid of 4 or 5 grand before you've got any permission. Whereas, Mark, if you go for permitted development rights, you know you've got that certainty probably for 1/10 of that. Hopefully that makes sense and gives you a little bit of steerage. One final question. I know we're probably just about over time, but I think this is an interesting one just to finish on. It came in quite quickly, so I want to pick this up from Carol. Carol, thank you very much. She says, how easy, that's not easy, nothing's easy. How easy is it to get into property development and raise the money and find the deals, etc.? It seems so complicated. Where does one start? I think, Carol, as I said earlier, you're riding the bike for the first time. My sister driving the car. Isn't it difficult when you're sat there? Probably, Carol, where you are looking in. Isn't it complicated? Doesn't it look like, oh my word, this is just far, far too much? As my sister said, it's impossible. You can't do all those things to my father in driving the car. Well, you can. It's just a little bit of knowledge. And a little bit of knowledge starts to give that confidence a boost. You need to know what you don't know, Carol, and that's the thing. And when you start understanding about, because none of this is easy, okay, but it's entirely possible. That's what I would always say. So in terms of raising the money, yeah, the money's out there. You just know how to go and get it, okay? Finding the deals, yeah, they're out there. You just need to know how to find them. You know, getting started, well, yes, you can do that. You just need to know how to where to get started. It seems complicated, yes, it is, but it's not complicated when you know how, okay? Where does one start? This actually leads very nicely, if you want, Carol, okay? We're going to run some sessions. We've got some free sessions, completely free. You come and spend 3 hours with myself and Ian. I mean, why wouldn't you want to do that? Come and spend 3 hours with us. We've got a webinar called the Six-Figure Roadmap. I think we're going to run some, I think there's probably definitely one Tuesday or Wednesday next week. Pop onto our website. We might have some others, but pop onto, sorry, this link. Write this down. Grab a pen, write this down. propertyceo.co.uk. propertyceo.co.uk/SFR for Six-Figure Roadmap. propertyceo.co.uk/SFR. Carol, go on there. I'm pretty certain we're running one Tuesday next week. We might have others. Click on there. There's a little drop-down menu. The team will tell you when we're actually next going to do a webinar. Jump on that, book that, come and spend 3 hours with us. You're going to start, in a way, you're going to start to understand some of these things. And if you like, where do you start? Well, that's where one can start. So, of course, it's not just exclusive for Carol. Anyone wants to come and join us for 3 hours. Why wouldn't you? Then you are more than welcome. I think we sort of about run out of time.
I think we did. I think you're actually over. Disgraceful. But I'll let you up, seeing as you filled in for Dan.
I did, didn't I? I did quite well at that, didn't I?
Dan does like his tennis, I remember. Just saying.
I don't know. Yeah, do you know? Wow, I never thought of that.
Well,
what a little scallywag, eh? Okay. Please pop in the chat box if you've enjoyed tonight's show. I do apologise, Ian and I apologise. We didn't get to your question. There's a load of questions in. Thank you for putting them in. It's great you're taking part. Of course, you can come back next week, and of course, you can ask us more questions. And all being well, assuming his technology is okay, we've got a great guy called Guy Rees. He's a good friend of his here at propertyCEO. He's from a company called UK Property Angels. Some people might know Guy. He is going to talk to us all about sourcing properties. And we've had a few questions on that tonight about sourcing properties and how he works helping people source properties and associates and links that up with supported living. That's a really guaranteed exit. What's not to like about that? Sourcing properties and a guaranteed exit through supported living. So if you want to come and join us next week, it's Thursday the 7th of July, 7 o'clock. Just pop on our website, re-register. Guy Rees from UKPA is going to be here. Good stuff. Let's see what anyone says this evening. Thank you very much, says Paul. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Great show, even without Dan, he says. Carolyn says, great show, good fun. Thank you. Jazz says, thanks both. Been a while, but good stuff as always. P.S. It's Olay. Oh, is it? Oh, well, whatever it was. Obviously, I did fib a little bit there, Jazz. I don't actually use it. It's just natural. It's just natural youthful looks. Harjinder says, thank you very much. Good fun. See you next week. Will you be doing any more podcasts, says Jen? No, but all the Open Door back shows are on YouTube, so you can listen to them. Stream them straight through your phone. You can listen to all of them. You don't have to see us then, so there's a double bonus there. There you go, Jen. Sadie says, great show. Thank you very much. See you next week. Helen says, fun as always. Helen, we've had fun. Glad you all have. Have a good week. See you next week. Cheers now. Bye-bye.